Okay, chapter 10 is all about data and surveys, and so today we're going to talk about analyzing surveys and samples. So, at the top it says a survey is a study of one or more characteristics of a group. The entire group that you want information about is called a population. A survey of an entire population is called a census. Okay, you've probably heard of the census where they ask every person who lives in the United States the same set of questions. That's really hard to do. And when it is difficult to perform a census, we can survey a sample, which is part of the population. Okay, so we have to talk about a few different sampling methods. First is random. And so it says in a random sample, every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. Random sample would be like we're trying to survey the middle school and find out the favorite ice cream flavor, and I just randomly pick 5 people in the courtyard. Systematic is where there would be a rule that's used to select members. So that would be like I'm going to ask every 3rd person who walks in the door or every 10th person who comes in for lunch. Self-selected, members of the population select themselves by volunteering. So that would be where I could say, hey, send me an email and tell me your favorite ice cream flavor, right? Only people who want to are going to send me their response. Stratified random is where we divide the population into distinct groups and then select people from each group. So I could say, well, I'm going to ask 5 6th graders, 5 7th graders, and 5 8th graders. I split them up into groups and then took a random sample of each group. And then in a convenience sample, only members of the population who are easily accessible are selected. So I'm just going to ask those of you guys who are in my classroom. Y'all are the convenience sample. So, example 1, it says the owners of a company with several factories conduct a survey to determine whether employees are informed about safety regulations. At each factory, 50 employees are chosen at random to complete the survey. Identify the population and classify the sampling method. Okay, so the population is all the company employees, right? That's who they're trying to gather data from. So population is all company employees. And then what kind of method are they using? Look at these ones at the top and see which one fits. It's going to be stratified, right? Because they're dividing it into groups, which are the individual factories. So that means that it is a stratified sample. We're going to get a set amount of people from each different factory. So it says in the previous example, what if the owners survey each employee whose last name begins with M? Classify the sampling method. So what would that one be? Is it random, systematic, self-selected, stratified, or convenience? That would be systematic, right? They're using a rule, and the rule is that your last name has to start with M. On number 2, it says the manager of a music store wants to evaluate how customers rate the selection of music the store has in stock. Customers are given comment cards with their receipts. Identify the population and classify the sampling method. What do you think? Who's the population? The population is all customers, because they're trying to survey all of their customers. And the method, right, which method are they using? That would be self-selected, right? If you want to give feedback, or how do you rate this selection of music? If you want to give feedback, you can turn in that comment card, but you don't have to. Number 3, your school's administrators want to know if students are satisfied with the choices of activities for activity periods, like electives. In each grade, every 7th student in alphabetical order is surveyed. Identify the population and classify the sampling method. So the population would be all students, right? We're trying to figure out if all the students are satisfied with their choices. And the method, which one is it? That is going to be systematic, right? They're using a system. They made a rule, and the rule is we're going to pick every 10th person or every 7th person in alphabetical order. So that would be systematic. Okay, this is fun to talk about. We're going to talk about biased and fair samples. A biased sample, or first of all, it says a sample chosen for a survey should be representative of the population. A biased sample is a sample that is not representative. In a biased sample, part of the population may be overrepresented or underrepresented. Random samples and stratified samples are the most likely types of samples to be representative. A systematic sample may be representative if the rule used to choose the individual is not biased. So it says in example number 1, suppose the owners question 50 workers chosen at random from one, that should say factory. Is this method likely to result in a biased sample? What do you think if they're only asking people at one factory? Yes, that's likely to be biased because we're only asking one factory, right? What if that factory has like the world's best manager, right? Who's doing all the right things, talking to them about safety. And so they survey that factory and they're like, oh yeah, we're doing great. We know all about safety, where the other 5 factories have never talked about safety. So that's biased, right? And they may have done that on purpose to be like, look at us, we're doing great, when in fact they're not. Okay, so letter A on number 4. It says a bicycling club wants to gather information about biking conditions throughout the city. A survey for bicycle riders is posted on the club's website. So what do you think? Biased or not? What do you think? I would say, and again, you can kind of argue it either way. I would say that this is not biased because anyone can comment and say yes, and anyone can comment and say no. On the next part, it says a management company that owns several apartment buildings wants to gather information about tenant satisfaction with the condition of the apartments. They send a survey to 30 random tenants in each of the buildings. Tenants is someone who's renting from you. So I would say this is not biased, right? That should give you a pretty fair sample. You're not limiting it to just one building or just 2 buildings. You're asking everybody. Everyone has a chance of being asked. Okay, along with your sample being biased, you can have a biased question. A question that encourages a particular response is a biased question. Survey questions should be worded in order to avoid bias. So it says, tell whether each question is potentially biased. Explain your answer. If the question is potentially biased, rewrite it so that it is not. So letter A, don't you agree that the voting age should be lowered to 16 because many 16-year-olds are responsible and informed? So what do you think? That is biased, right? It obviously is trying to sway you. Don't you agree? Anytime it says don't you agree, it's generally going to be biased. And so the correct way to write that would be, do you think the voting age should be lowered to 16? Right? There's no bias in that question. Letter B, do you think the city should risk an increase in pollution by allowing expansion of the Northern Industrial Park? Biased or fair? Biased, right? Because they're suggesting that there's going to be an increase in pollution. So the fair way to say that would be like saying something like, do you support the expansion of the Northern Industrial Park? Okay, letter C. How interested are you in the world's most popular sport, soccer? This is fair, right? Because this is a fact. It's the world's most popular sport. It is what it is, whether you agree with it or not. Okay, and then letter D. Do you think the city should renovate the library? That's also fair. Okay, because it's just a point-blank question. We're not trying to encourage a particular response.